The camera flash captured their last perfect moment. Robert and Jennifer Thomas flanking their children, 13-year-old Mark and 11-year-old Sarah, with Luna, their golden retriever, sitting proudly in the center. Their smiles frozen in time. Hours later, Jennifer stood at the window, watching darkness swallow Blackwood Forest. The children had only gone to walk Luna, a 30-minute loop they'd done countless times. But 3 hours had passed. No children, no dog. Just woods that seemed to grow darker with each passing second. Something was terribly wrong. The question wasn't if she should call the police, but why she hadn't done it sooner. Before we begin, I'm curious about where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. Let us know in the comments below. Please subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything to us. The Thomas family was picture perfect that Sunday in June. Robert, an accountant with laugh lines around his eyes, had insisted on the family portrait. Jennifer, who taught second grade at Millfield Elementary, arranged everyone on the park blanket. Mark sat tall beside his father, already showing hints of the man he would become. Sarah, with her mother's blonde hair and curious eyes, leaned against Jennifer. And Luna, their golden retriever, sat obediently in the middle, her tail thumping against the grass. "Everyone say cheese," called the photographer. The camera flashed. None of them knew this would be the last photo of them all together. Their home on Maple Street was the kind neighbors envied, not for its size, but for the happiness it contained. Game nights on Fridays, pancake breakfasts on Saturdays, long walks with Luna on Sundays. The rhythm of their life was as steady as a heartbeat. That afternoon, while Jennifer prepared dinner and Robert worked in the garage, Mark grabbed Luna's leash from its hook by the door. "Mom, we're taking Luna to Blackwood," he called. Jennifer looked up from chopping vegetables. "Stay on the main trail." "We know the rules," Sarah said, already halfway out the door, her pink sneakers lighting up with each step. Jennifer watched them go. Mark in his blue soccer jersey, Sarah with her favorite scrunchie holding back her hair, Luna bounding ahead. The afternoon sun painted long shadows across the lawn as they disappeared around the corner. She returned to dinner preparations, humming softly. A strange feeling pricked at the back of her neck. Just last week, she'd read about suspicious activity in Camden County, the next town over. 2 children approached by a stranger in a van. Nothing had happened, they'd run away, but the news had planted a seed of worry in Jennifer's mind. She shook it off. Millfield was different, safe. Their neighbors looked out for each other. The kids knew not to talk to strangers. Yet as she sliced tomatoes for the salad, the worry grew like a shadow as the sun moved across the sky. Her knife paused mid-cut. "They're fine," she said aloud to the empty kitchen. "They've done this walk 100 times. But something didn't feel right. The air in the house seemed too still, too quiet, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And something was about to happen. Something that would tear their picture-perfect life apart. At the entrance to Blackwood Forest, Mark unclipped Luna's leash. The golden retriever bounded ahead, nose to the ground, tail wagging like a flag in the wind. "I bet she finds another dead squirrel," Sarah said, wrinkling her nose. "Gross," Mark laughed. "Race you to the big oak?" They sprinted down the familiar dirt path, dodging roots and low-hanging branches. The forest welcomed them with dappled sunlight and the sweet smell of pine. Luna ran circles around them, barking with joy. When they reached the massive oak tree that marked the halfway point of their usual route, Sarah stopped, hands on her knees, breathing hard. "Hey," she said between breaths. "Let's try that side trail today." Mark frowned at the narrow path cutting away from their regular route. Mom said to stick to the main trail. "We're 13 and 11, not babies." Sarah rolled her eyes. "It probably just loops back around, and Luna needs adventure." As if understanding, Luna trotted toward the new path, looking back expectantly. "Fine." Mark sighed. But just this once. The side trail grew narrower as they walked deeper into the forest. The cheerful bird songs faded. Even Luna seemed more alert, her ears perked forward. "Maybe we should head back," Mark said after 10 minutes. "Just a little further," Sarah insisted. "I think I hear water." The path opened to a small clearing. A dirt road cut through it, barely wide enough for a vehicle. Beyond the clearing, they glimpsed the flash of a small stream. "See? I told you." Sarah's words died in her throat. A rusty van was parked at the edge of the clearing. A man in a dark jacket gripped the arm of a teenage girl with red-rimmed eyes. She wasn't crying now, but her face showed she had been. The man was forcing her toward the van's open doors. "Get in and shut up," the man growled. Mark grabbed Sarah's arm, pulling her behind a thick bush. Luna, sensing danger, crouched low beside them, unnaturally quiet. "We have to help her," Sarah whispered. "We need to get out of here and call the police," Mark whispered back, reaching for his pocket before remembering that they'd left their phones at home. A twig snapped beneath Sarah's foot. The man's head whipped toward their hiding spot. "Who's there?" he shouted. Everything happened too fast. Luna burst from the bushes, barking furiously. A second man emerged from the van. The teenage girl made a break for freedom but was caught. Mark pulled Sarah up and they ran. "Split up," Mark shouted. "Meet at the oak tree." Sarah veered left. Mark right. Luna disappeared into the underbrush, still barking. Sarah's lungs burned as she ran. Branches scratched her face. She heard heavy footsteps behind her. A hand grabbed her backpack, jerking her backward. She screamed. Half a mile away, Mark heard his sister's scream. He skidded to a stop. Torn between safety and Sarah, he turned back. A different man, this one with a scar across his chin, stepped out from behind a tree directly in Mark's path. "Where do you think you're going, boy?" Mark tried to run, but the man was faster. A rough hand clamped over his mouth. Something sharp pricked his arm. The forest began to spin. As consciousness slipped away, Mark's last thought was of Sarah. He had told her to run. He had said they would meet at the oak tree. Neither of them would make it there. Miles away, Luna ran for home. Her golden coat matted with mud and blood from a cut on her leg. Around her neck, her collar, with its bone-shaped tag, jingled with each frantic stride. The tag that would become the first clue in a mystery spanning 9 years. A mystery that began with a simple walk in the woods. By sunset, Jennifer's worry had morphed into full-blown panic. Robert had already driven the neighborhood twice, calling the children's names. No response, no sign of them, no Luna either. "I'm calling the police," Jennifer said, fingers trembling as she dialed. Within hours, Blackwood Forest crawled with searchers, police officers with flashlights, volunteers calling out for Mark and Sarah, search dogs sniffing clothing taken from the children's bedrooms, helicopters with spotlights cutting through the darkness. Officer Davis, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, sat with Jennifer and Robert at their kitchen table. "When exactly did they leave the house?" he asked. 4:30, Jennifer said immediately. "I checked the time because dinner was at 6. "And they've done this walk before?" "Hundreds of times," Robert said, his voice hollow. "It's a 30-minute loop. They know it by heart." The officer nodded, making notes. "Any issues at home? Any reason they might have run away?" "Absolutely not," Jennifer snapped. "They wouldn't do that." As dawn broke, the search expanded. News vans parked along Maple Street. Reporters talked about the missing Thomas children with practiced concern. Detective Michael Reeves arrived around noon. Unlike Officer Davis, his eyes weren't kind. They were sharp, missing nothing. He walked the Thomas house, studying family photos, opening drawers, checking the children's rooms. "The dog is missing too?" he asked. "Yes, Luna. She always goes with him," Robert explained. Reeves nodded. "Dogs sometimes find their way home. Keep your doors open for her." In Blackwood Forest, searchers found nothing. No discarded items, no signs of a struggle, no footprints beyond the main trail. It was as if the forest had swallowed Mark, Sarah, and Luna whole. The first night without the children, Jennifer and Robert sat on their children's beds, holding their pillows, breathing in their scents. Neither slept. Both jumped at every sound, hoping it was the children returning. The second day brought more searchers but fewer reporters. The third day, even fewer. On the fourth morning, Robert opened the front door to get the newspaper and found Luna collapsed on the porch. Her golden coat was filthy, one leg badly cut. She whimpered weakly, too exhausted to wag her tail. "Jennifer!" Robert shouted, gathering the dog in his arms. "Luna's back." Hope surged. If Luna had found her way home, maybe the children would too, but Luna came alone. The veterinarian treated Luna's injuries while Detective Reeves examined her collar, a GPS tracker. A birthday gift from Robert to help find Luna if she ever ran off was still attached to the tag. "This might give us something," Reeves said, downloading the data. The GPS revealed Luna's path through the forest, not on the main trail, but veering off on a side path that led to a dirt service road. From there, the trail went cold. The road connected to the highway leaving town. "They were taken," Jennifer said, voicing what they all now suspected. Detective Reeves stood in the Thomas living room, face grim. "We're changing the classification from missing persons to possible abduction. I'm bringing in the FBI." FBI agent Taylor set up a command center in the Millfield Community Center. Blackwood Forest was searched again, inch by inch. The dirt road was examined for tire tracks. Security footage from every gas station, convenience store, and traffic camera within 50 miles was reviewed. Nothing. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The Thomas house filled with maps, timelines, and lists of potential witnesses. Jennifer and Robert existed in suspended animation, unable to move forward, refusing to give up hope. 6 months after the disappearance, Agent Taylor sat them down at their kitchen table. "We've exhausted every lead," she said gently. "The case remains open, but our active investigation is being scaled back." "You're giving up?" Jennifer's voice cracked. "We're not giving up." But without new information, Agent Taylor left the sentence unfinished. That night, after the agent left, Luna began barking frantically at the back door. When Robert opened it, she bolted into the yard, looking back expectantly. "She wants us to follow her," he realized. Luna led them to Blackwood Forest, straight to the entrance of the side path. But park rangers had blocked it off months ago as part of the investigation. Luna pawed at the barrier, whining. "She knows something," Jennifer whispered. Detective Reeves, who had stayed on the case even as others moved on, got permission to reopen the trail. The next day, Luna led them down the path to the clearing with the dirt road. She began digging frantically beneath a young pine tree. In the freshly turned earth lay Sarah's friendship bracelet, colorful threads woven together, slightly dirty but unmistakable. Jennifer had made matching ones for Sarah and her best friend the previous summer. "This wasn't here during the initial search," Reeves said. "Someone came back and buried it." A message? A warning? A clue deliberately left? They couldn't be sure. But it was something, proof that at least one of the children had been here. And with that small piece of evidence, the investigation sparked back to life. What no one knew then was that finding the answers would take not months, but years. And the truth would be more horrifying than any of them imagined. Mark woke to darkness and the rumble of an engine. His head pounded. Nausea rolled through his stomach. He tried to move his hands, but found them bound with zip ties. Tape covered his mouth. The van hit a pothole, and pain shot through his body. As his eyes adjusted to the dim light, he made out the shape of another person across from him, the teenage girl from the forest. Her eyes were open, watching him. Tear tracks stained her cheeks. Mark's thoughts raced to Sarah. Where was she? Was she in another vehicle? Was she safe? The questions swirled in his throbbing head without answers. Hours passed. The van stopped occasionally. Mark heard muffled voices but couldn't make out words. When the doors finally opened, harsh light blinded him. Rough hands pulled him out. They were at a desolate farmhouse, miles from anywhere, surrounded by flat, empty fields. "This one's strong," a voice said. "He'll do well in the shop." Mark was taken to a basement room with 3 thin mattresses on the floor. 2 boys, maybe 15 and 16, sat against the wall. Their hollow eyes barely registered his arrival. "Where am I?" Mark asked after his gag was removed. "Where's my sister?" "Shut up," the man with the scar said. "You don't have a sister anymore. You don't have a name anymore. You're just number 8 now." 200 miles away, Sarah was being pulled from a different van. Her surroundings were not a rural farmhouse, but the backlot of a nondescript warehouse in an industrial zone. Inside, she was pushed into a room with 4 girls of varying ages. None spoke to her. All looked terrified. A woman with cold eyes entered. "Process her," she told an assistant. Sarah's clothes were taken. Her hair was cut short. Her tears were met with slaps. "No crying," the woman said. "No talking about before. You live here now. You work here now. If you behave, you eat. If not," she left the threat unfinished. Thus began their new existence. Parallel lives of captivity separated by distance and circumstance, connected only by shared blood and the memory of who they once were. In Millfield, life took on a surreal quality for Jennifer and Robert. The calendar pages turned. Seasons changed. But time seemed frozen on that June afternoon. The initial media frenzy faded. The volunteer search parties dwindled. The community's sympathy evolved into pitying glances. Friends stopped mentioning the children, unsure what to say after months of no progress. Only Luna remained steadfastly vigilant. Every day she sat by the front window, watching the street. Every night she slept half on Mark's bed, half on Sarah's, as if keeping vigil for both. 1 year after the disappearance, Jennifer stood in Sarah's room, dust collecting on untouched toys. Middle school would have started in the fall. Sarah would be 12 now. Mark, 14. "They're alive," she told Robert that night. "I can feel it." Robert, who had aged a decade in 12 months, nodded. "Then we keep looking." They converted their dining room into a search headquarters. Maps covered the walls, marked with red pins showing every reported sighting, all false leads so far. They started a foundation, Find Mark and Sarah. Their faces appeared on billboards across 3 states. Detective Reeves, though officially moved to other cases, still stopped by weekly. "I haven't forgotten them," he promised. On the first anniversary of the disappearance, Jennifer took Luna to Blackwood Forest. The dog led her straight to the clearing again, to the same spot where they'd found the bracelet. Luna dug frantically, but this time found nothing. As they turned to leave, Luna suddenly darted to a different spot and began digging again. Jennifer followed, heart pounding. There, half buried in the earth, was a small plastic army man, the kind Mark collected. It hadn't been there during previous searches. Jennifer called Reeves immediately. "Someone's leaving messages," she said. "Someone knows." The FBI analyzed the toy soldier and found microscopic traces of motor oil consistent with an auto repair shop. But this clue, like others, led nowhere concrete, just another red pin on their map of possibilities. Meanwhile, Mark learned the rules of his new life quickly. Wake at dawn. Work in the chop shop dismantling stolen cars until nightfall. Keep your head down. Don't ask questions. Don't try to escape. The first boy who tried to run was brought back with broken fingers. The second didn't come back at all. Mark heard the gunshot from the field behind the farmhouse. Yet in quiet moments, he whispered his true name to himself. Mark Thomas, son of Robert and Jennifer, brother to Sarah. This became his silent rebellion, remembering who he was. As months turned into years, new boys came and went. Mark grew taller, stronger. His captors valued his mechanical skills in the shop. He earned small privileges, better food, fewer beatings. And he watched, listened, learned the patterns of guards and the layout of the property. Every night, he made a small mark on the underside of his mattress, days turning into weeks, weeks into months, months into years. In his third year of captivity, Mark began leaving tiny marks in the cars they dismantled, a small MT scratched under seats, inside glove compartments, places that might not be discovered immediately. It was dangerous, but he needed to leave some trace of himself in the world. Sarah's captivity took a different form. The warehouse was a distribution center for counterfeit goods, staffed entirely by trafficked women and children. 12 hours a day, she packaged fake designer items, applied counterfeit labels, and loaded boxes. The woman with cold eyes, everyone called her Madam, had a particular interest in Sarah. "You have good hands," she would say, inspecting Sarah's work. "Detailed, careful. That's valuable." Sarah learned to be invisible while seeing everything. She memorized delivery schedules, guard rotations, which doors were left unlocked. She mapped the building in her mind, counting steps between exits, noting which windows could open. When new girls arrived, terrified and disoriented as she once was, Sarah whispered reassurances when no one was listening. "Remember who you are," she would tell them. "Don't forget your real name." At night, lying on her thin mattress in a room with 7 others, Sarah would silently recite her family's names like a prayer. Mom, Jennifer. Dad, Robert. Brother, Mark. Dog, Luna. Address, 42 Maple Street, Millfield. Over and over until the words became a lifeline to her past. In her 4th year, Sarah was promoted to quality control, checking others' work. This gave her more freedom to move around the warehouse, more chances to observe. She noticed the delivery drivers never checked inside the boxes they transported. She began to formulate a plan. Back in Millfield, Jennifer and Robert had remortgaged their house to keep the search going. The Find Mark and Sarah Foundation had expanded, helping other families of missing children. Their dining room headquarters became an office downtown with volunteers and a full-time private investigator. Robert's accounting firm had been understanding at first, but after 3 years his performance suffered. He was placed on probationary status, then let go. Jennifer continued teaching, finding solace in caring for other people's children while searching for her own. Luna, now aging with gray around her muzzle, still accompanied Jennifer everywhere. On the 3-year anniversary of the disappearance, they returned once more to Blackwood Forest. This time, Luna led them to yet another spot, further down the service road than they'd searched before. Beneath a cairn of small rocks, Jennifer found a tarnished charm bracelet. Not Sarah's, but similar to one sold at the mall where Sarah used to shop. Attached was a small piece of paper, weathered but still legible. A single word, alive. Jennifer showed the note to Reeves, now promoted to captain, but still dedicated to the case. "Someone is communicating with us," Jennifer insisted. "Someone knows they're alive. Or someone is torturing you with false hope," Reeves said gently. "We have to consider all possibilities." But Jennifer knew. A mother's instinct, unscientific but unshakable, told her that her children were out there somewhere. Waiting, surviving, perhaps even trying to send messages home. What she couldn't know was how close they had come to discovery several times. In year 4 of his captivity, one of the cars Mark dismantled had a hidden dashboard camera. The auto theft ring had missed it during their initial check. Mark found it and, in a moment of desperate inspiration, looked directly into the lens and mouthed, "My name is Mark Thomas, kidnapped from Millfield," before hiding his MT mark inside the seat cushion. 3 weeks later, a police raid on a used parts shop 2 states away recovered the camera. A vigilant detective noticed the strange footage and flagged it, but the lead detective on duty dismissed it as a prank or misunderstanding. The report was filed away, connections unmade. In Sarah's 5th year of captivity, a new girl arrived at the warehouse, Zoe, just 13, from a town only 20 miles from Millfield. When Sarah heard where she was from, hope flared for the first time in years. "Do you know about the Thomas children?" Sarah whispered one night. "The ones who disappeared?" Zoe's eyes widened. "Everyone knows that story. There are still billboards." "I'm Sarah Thomas," she said, heart racing. "If you get out, tell them." But Zoe never got out. Caught trying to smuggle a note to a delivery driver, she disappeared from the warehouse the next day. Sarah never learned if her message made it beyond those walls. As the 5th anniversary approached, Robert and Jennifer faced a terrible decision. Their foundation was running out of money. The tips had dried up. Public interest had waned. Even Detective Reeves, now Captain Reeves, could offer little more than sympathy. "Do we keep going?" Robert asked one night. "Can we keep going?" Jennifer looked at Luna, now elderly but still keeping her vigil at the window. "We can't stop," she said simply. "They wouldn't stop looking for us." That night, Luna began barking frantically at the front door. When Robert opened it, there was no one there, just the evening newspaper. But Luna kept barking at the paper itself. On the 3rd page, a small article caught Jennifer's eye. "Raid on auto theft ring recovers millions in stolen parts." The operation was based in a rural area 3 states away. Something about it resonated with Jennifer. She added the location to their map, another red pin in a sea of possibilities. What she didn't know was that Mark had been moved from that location just 2 days before the raid. What she couldn't know was that they had come the closest yet to finding him. And the clock was still ticking. 5 years disappeared like smoke. Mark was 18 now. No longer a boy but a young man hardened by half a decade of captivity. The scrawny 13-year-old was gone, replaced by someone taller, stronger, with calloused hands and watchful eyes. He'd been moved 3 times over the years as the trafficking ring shifted operations to avoid detection. Each move erased any progress he'd made toward escape, forcing him to learn new routines, new guards, new security measures. His current location was a warehouse complex on the outskirts of a city he couldn't name. The operation had expanded, not just stolen cars now, but drugs and weapons too. More guards, more security cameras, more reasons to lose hope. But Mark hadn't forgotten his real name or his family. Each night, in the darkness of the dormitory he shared with 7 others, he whispered their names. Mom, Dad, Sarah, Luna, his mantra of remembrance. What kept him going was the newcomers, boys as young as 10, arriving terrified and disoriented as he once had been. Mark had become their protector, teaching them to survive without losing themselves entirely. Keep something they can't take, he would whisper. A memory, a name, something that's still yours. The newest arrival, a 12-year-old called Danny, reminded Mark painfully of himself. Same determined jaw, same defiant eyes. I'm going to escape, Danny declared on his 3rd night. Not alone, Mark whispered back. And not yet. Watch first. Learn. Then we plan. Mark had attempted escape twice before. The first time earned him 3 broken ribs and a month in isolation. The second attempt got him transferred to a higher security facility. But he kept plotting, kept watching for opportunities. His latest plan involved the weekly supply truck. He had noticed the driver never locked the cab when making deliveries. If they could hide inside during loading, they might get beyond the perimeter before being discovered. It would be risky, but after 5 years, risk seemed better than certainty, the certainty of spending his life as someone's property. 1,600 miles away, Sarah had transformed from a frightened 11-year-old into a resourceful 16-year-old who had earned a precarious place of trust. Her detailed work had impressed Madam enough to be promoted to inventory management, giving her access to shipping manifests and delivery schedules. Sarah had grown taller but remained thin, her once bright eyes now calculating. She'd learned to hide her intelligence behind a mask of compliance. She'd survived by becoming invaluable, too useful to discard, too trusted to watch closely. But she hadn't surrendered. Not completely. Like Mark, she kept her true self alive in secret ways. She remembered Millfield. She remembered Luna's soft fur and her father's laugh. She remembered her mother's voice singing her to sleep. And she watched. For 5 years, she had observed the operation's patterns. She knew which guards were negligent, which were cruel. She knew the building's blind spots where security cameras didn't reach. Most importantly, she knew that Madam kept a burner phone in her office desk. Sarah had been planning for months. The annual inventory audit was approaching, the one time when outside accountants visited the warehouse. Security would be tighter around the merchandise, but more focused on preventing theft than watching the workers. It might be her only chance. In Millfield, Robert and Jennifer Thomas marked the 5th anniversary of their children's disappearance, not with a press conference as in previous years, but with a quiet visit to Blackwood Forest. Luna, now elderly with a gray muzzle and clouded eyes, still insisted on coming, though the walk tired her quickly. The foundation office had downsized to a single room. The volunteers had dwindled to a handful. The map still hung on the wall, but few new pins had been added in recent months. Captain Reeves, though officially assigned to other cases, still made time for them. "I've been doing this job for 25 years, he told them over coffee in their kitchen. "I've seen a lot of missing persons cases. Most are resolved quickly, one way or another. The ones that aren't," he paused, choosing his words carefully. "The longer they stay missing, the harder it gets to find them." "You think we should give up?" Jennifer's voice was sharp. "I didn't say that," Reeves replied gently. "I'd never say that." "Good, because we won't." Jennifer's determination remained undiminished by time. "They're alive. I know it." That afternoon, as Robert sorted through the monthly pile of tips and reported sightings, most obviously false, some plausible enough to investigate, the Foundation's phone rang. "Find Mark and Sarah Foundation," he answered automatically. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar. A woman, middle-aged by the sound of her. "I was watching a documentary about missing children," she said. "They showed your kids' pictures. The thing is, I think I've seen the girl." Robert's heart lurched as it had hundreds of times before with similar calls. "I work for a cleaning service. We do offices, warehouses, that kind of thing. There's this place we clean once a month, Industrial Park in Riverside. Very strict security. We're not supposed to interact with the workers, but I noticed this one girl, thin blonde. She looked at me like she wanted to say something, but one of the supervisors called her away." Robert wrote down every detail. It wasn't much. Riverside was a common name, found in dozens of states. Industrial parks were everywhere. But something about the woman's description felt different from the usual vague sightings. He called Reeves immediately. The captain promised to check it out, but cautioned against high hopes. Too many similar leads had ended in disappointment. What Robert couldn't know was that this was indeed the closest they had come. The cleaning woman had glimpsed Sarah just 3 weeks earlier, But by the time investigators identified the potential location, the operation had already moved again, responding to rumors of increased law enforcement activity in the area. Another near miss in a long series of them. The breakthrough, when it finally came, arrived through an unexpected channel. A multi-state task force on organized crime had been tracking a suspected trafficking network for months. During a raid on a warehouse in Riverside, they discovered financial records linking to several other locations, including the auto shop where Mark was being held. The FBI agent assigned to the financial investigation was new to the case, but the names on the missing persons alert triggered a memory. 5 years earlier, as a rookie agent, she had been briefly assigned to the Thomas children's disappearance before being transferred. She called Captain Reeves that same day.
"I think we might have something,"
she said. A possible connection to a trafficking ring operating across 5 states. We're planning simultaneous raids next month. Reeves drove to the Thomas house immediately. He found Jennifer sitting with Luna in the backyard, the aging dog's head in her lap. "I can't promise anything," he said after explaining the potential lead. "But this is the strongest connection we've had in years." Jennifer nodded, afraid to hope too much after so many disappointments. But that night, for the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine bringing her children home. Luna, as if sensing the shift in Jennifer's emotions, seemed more alert than she had in months. The old dog stood by the window for hours, watching the street as she had done every day since the children disappeared. "You still believe they're coming back, don't you, girl?" Jennifer whispered, stroking the dog's graying head. Luna wagged her tail once, twice. Her cloudy eyes remained fixed on the horizon, waiting. What none of them knew was that events were already in motion. In 2 different facilities, hundreds of miles apart, both Mark and Sarah were preparing desperate bids for freedom. And after 5 years of near misses and false leads, their parallel paths were about to converge. 7 years had passed since that summer afternoon in Blackwood Forest. Mark was now 20, a man who had spent more than a third of his life in captivity. Sarah was 18. Her childhood stolen, her adolescence spent in survival mode. The trafficking organization had grown more sophisticated, but also more paranoid. Increased law enforcement pressure had forced them to compartmentalize operations and move locations frequently. This meant tighter security, but also more opportunities for mistakes. Mark had been promoted to supervisor in the chop shop, responsible for training new arrivals in dismantling vehicles. His captors trusted him as much as they trusted anyone, because he had stopped trying to escape, or so they thought. In reality, Mark had simply become more patient. Each day he made mental notes of guard rotations, security camera positions, and which doors remained unlocked. He had created a network among the other captives, particularly the newer boys who still had fight left in them. His latest opportunity came when a new guard, younger and more careless than the others, began working the night shift. Mark noticed the guard often fell asleep, around 2 a.m., leaving a crucial 20-minute window when the back loading area was unwatched. But Mark needed leverage, something to ensure he wouldn't be pursued immediately. Over months of eavesdropping, he had learned about a ledger kept in the main office safe. It contained locations, names, and details of the entire trafficking network. If he could get that ledger out, it would be worth more than just his freedom. Meanwhile, Sarah had executed her own plan. During the annual inventory audit, she had managed to steal the burner phone from Madam's office. Hidden in the warehouse's bathroom ceiling tile, she retrieved it only during her night cleaning duty when supervision was lightest. For 3 weeks, she had tried calling emergency numbers, but the warehouse's concrete walls blocked the signal. She needed to get the phone outside, but workers were never allowed outdoors except during closely supervised loading operations. Her opportunity came when one of the accountants left his laptop unattended. In the 2 minutes before he returned, Sarah accessed his email and sent a message to the tip line listed on her family's foundation website: Sarah Thomas, alive. Captive 7 years. Industrial warehouse. Help. She included no location. She didn't know exactly where she was, but it was the first direct communication she had managed to send in 7 years of captivity. The message landed in the Foundation's general inbox, buried among dozens of daily emails. Most spam, some well-meaning but useless tips, others cruel hoaxes. The part-time volunteer who checked the inbox flagged it for review but didn't recognize its significance immediately. 2 days later, the FBI task force's planned raid on the auto shop where Mark was held was accelerated when informants reported that the operation was preparing to relocate. With no time to coordinate with Captain Reeves or the Thomas family, agents moved in at dawn. Mark and 3 other captives were hiding in the supply closet, preparing their own escape attempt scheduled for that night, when they heard the commotion. Shouts. Gunfire. The crash of doors being broken down. "It's a raid," whispered Danny, now 14 and Mark's most trusted ally. Mark made a split-second decision. While guards were distracted by the front assault, he led the group toward the office where the ledger was kept. The safe was open. Someone had been in the middle of removing its contents when the raid began. Mark grabbed the ledger and ran for the back exit, the other boys following close behind. They emerged into the morning light, just as agents were securing the perimeter. "Don't shoot!" Mark shouted, hands raised, the ledger clutched against his chest. "We're captives. We were kidnapped." The raid recovered 17 trafficked individuals and arrested 12 members of the organization. But the leaders, the ones who had taken Mark and Sarah from Blackwood Forest 7 years earlier, weren't among them. At the FBI field office, Mark sat in an interview room, exhausted but alert. He had given his real name immediately, but the agent seemed skeptical. "Mark Thomas," he repeated. "I was taken from Millfield 7 years ago. My sister Sarah was taken too. You need to find her." The interviewing agent left the room to check the database. Mark waited, heart pounding. Would anyone remember them after so many years? Would anyone believe him? The door opened, and a different agent entered, older with kind eyes that reminded Mark of his father. "We've contacted Captain Reeves in Millfield," the agent said. "He's reaching out to your parents right now." The world seemed to stop. "They're alive?" Mark whispered. "Very much alive, and they never stopped looking for you." Mark broke down then, the first tears he had allowed himself in years. When he regained composure, he held out the ledger. "This has everything," he said. "Locations, names, including where they might be keeping my sister." The ledger proved to be exactly what Mark claimed, a comprehensive record of the trafficking network's operations across 5 states. Among the locations listed was an industrial warehouse in Riverside. The same warehouse where Sarah had sent her desperate email 3 days earlier. The same email that still sat unread in the Foundation's inbox. As FBI teams prepared to coordinate raids on the remaining locations, Robert and Jennifer Thomas received the call they had waited 7 years to get. "We've found Mark," Captain Reeves said, his professional composure cracking. "He's alive, and he may know where Sarah is." The reunion between Mark and his parents happened in the sterile conference room of an FBI field office. 7 years of separation collapsed in an instant as Jennifer rushed forward, enveloping her son in an embrace that made up for 1,000 lost hugs. Robert stood frozen for a moment, staring at the grown man who had replaced his 13-year-old boy before joining the embrace. Luna wasn't there. Her advanced age made travel difficult, but Mark asked about her immediately. "She's hanging on," Jennifer said through tears. "It's like she knew we'd find you." The initial joy of reunion quickly gave way to urgent purpose. Sarah was still missing. The ledger Mark had stolen provided the most promising lead in years, a warehouse in Riverside, California, listed as packaging operation, 24 workers. FBI agents were already coordinating with local authorities for a raid, but Mark insisted on being involved. "I know how these people operate," he told the FBI tactical team. "They have evacuation protocols. If they suspect law enforcement, they'll move everyone before you can get there." Back in Millfield, the Foundation office had finally discovered Sarah's email. The volunteer who found it called Jennifer immediately, unaware that she was already with Mark. "Mrs. Thomas, there's an email here. It says it's from Sarah." The message was forwarded to the FBI team planning the warehouse raid. Though brief, it confirmed their intelligence that Sarah was likely at that location. What no one realized was that the trafficking operation had indeed been tipped off. A corrupt police officer on their payroll had warned them about increased federal activity targeting their network. At the warehouse, Madam ordered an immediate evacuation. "Move all high-value workers to the backup location," she instructed her second-in-command. "Eliminate any potential liabilities." Sarah overheard this conversation from her position near the office door. High-value workers included her and 5 others with specialized skills. Liabilities meant the newer girls, those who hadn't yet been broken to complete compliance. She had minutes to act. Using the access card she'd stolen months earlier, Sarah slipped into the security office while the guard was helping with evacuation preparations. The monitors showed chaos throughout the warehouse, workers being roughly divided into groups, some loaded onto trucks, others herded into a back room. Sarah knew what happened in that back room. She'd seen girls taken there before who never returned. With trembling fingers, she found the emergency alarm system. One press would trigger fire alarms throughout the building and automatically alert the fire department. It would create chaos, but it might save lives. She pressed the button. Sirens wailed. Sprinklers activated. The orderly evacuation dissolved into panic. Using the confusion, Sarah ran to the dormitory where the newest arrivals were kept. "Fire!" she shouted, unlocking the door. "Everyone out! This way!" She led 12 girls, some as young as 9, toward a rear emergency exit she'd identified years earlier in her mental mapping of the building. Behind them, she heard Madam shouting for security to stop them. Outside, in the glaring daylight, Sarah faced a decision. The others looked to her, waiting for direction. Stay together and risk recapture, scatter and hope some escaped. Before she could decide, police sirens wailed in the distance. The fire alarm had brought first responders. But would they understand what was really happening here? Sarah gathered the girls behind a dumpster. "When the police come," she instructed, "tell them you were kidnapped. Tell them your real names. Don't run from them." A guard spotted them and started in their direction. Sarah stepped out from hiding, drawing his attention away from the others. "Hey!" she shouted. "Looking for me?" She ran. The guard in pursuit. She had one advantage: knowledge of the terrain. She'd spent countless hours memorizing every inch of the exterior during rare outdoor work assignments. She led him toward the front of the building, where fire trucks were now arriving. The guard, realizing he was about to run straight into law enforcement, broke off the chase. Sarah stumbled toward the nearest firefighter. "Help!" she gasped. "I'm Sarah Thomas. I was kidnapped 7 years ago. There are other girls inside." The firefighter stared in shock before grabbing his radio. Within minutes, what had started as a fire response became a multi-agency rescue operation. As police secured the warehouse, they found evidence of a large-scale trafficking operation. Some victims had been evacuated before their arrival, but 32 were recovered, including all 12 girls Sarah had led to safety. Sarah was taken to a hospital for examination, while police contacted the FBI team already en route. Captain Reeves, who was traveling with Mark and his parents, received the call as their plane prepared for landing. "We have her," The agent said simply. "We have Sarah." After 7 years of separation, the Thomas siblings were about to be reunited. But the masterminds behind their abduction, the ones who had stolen their childhood, were still at large. The final chapter of their ordeal was yet to be written. 9 years after Mark and Sarah Thomas disappeared into Blackwood Forest, they sat side by side in the back of an FBI SUV, heading toward the home they had been taken from a lifetime ago. Neither spoke. Words seemed inadequate for the moment. Sarah glanced at her brother. At 22, Mark's face had lost the softness of the boy she remembered, replaced by the harder angles of adulthood. A thin scar ran along his jawline, one of many visible marks their captivity had left. But his eyes were the same, determined, protective, alive. Mark studied his sister, too. Sarah was 20, now thin and wiry. Her once long blonde hair now cropped short in a practical style. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, speaking of years of vigilance and too little rest. But there was strength in her posture, an unbreakable core that 9 years of captivity hadn't managed to crush. They had spent the past 2 weeks in separate debriefings with FBI agents, providing details that helped dismantle much of the trafficking network. Their testimonies, combined with the ledger Mark had stolen, led to raids on 12 facilities across 7 states and the recovery of over 100 trafficked individuals. But the leaders, the ones who had orchestrated everything, including their abduction from Blackwood Forest, remained at large. "Do you think they'll come after us?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence. Mark shook his head. "They've lost too much. Their operation is in ruins. And besides," he added with grim satisfaction, "they know what would happen if they tried." The SUV turned onto Maple Street. Both siblings leaned forward, taking in the familiar neighborhood that had grown unfamiliar with time. Mrs. Donovan's maple tree was gone. The Wilsons' house had been painted from blue to green, small changes that underscored how much time had passed. And then they saw it, 42 Maple Street, their home. It looked smaller somehow, but the porch light was on, as it had been every night for 9 years. "They never gave up," Sarah whispered. In the driveway stood Robert and Jennifer, 9 years older but instantly recognizable, and beside them, moving slowly but tail-wagging unmistakably, was Luna. The SUV hadn't fully stopped before Sarah opened the door. She ran toward the elderly golden retriever, dropping to her knees on the lawn. Luna whimpered with joy, her whole body wiggling despite her arthritic joints.
"You waited,"
Sarah sobbed into Luna's fur. "You waited for us." Mark approached more slowly, overwhelmed by the normalcy of the scene. The house, the lawn, his parents. Things he had forced himself to stop dreaming about years ago. Jennifer embraced him first, then pulled Sarah up from where she knelt with Luna. For a long moment, the four of them stood locked together on the lawn, Luna pressing against their legs. "Welcome home," Robert said, his voice thick with emotion. Inside, the house was both the same and different. The furniture was arranged as they remembered, but new photos covered the walls. Not just old ones, of Mark and Sarah, but pictures of the search, the foundation, the community that had rallied around their disappearance. "We kept your rooms," Jennifer said. "We always knew you'd come back." As they settled in the living room, the same couch, the same chairs, but with 9 years of absence between them, Luna limped over to Mark and rested her gray muzzle on his knee. Her cloudy eyes seemed to study him, matching memories with the man before her. "She never stopped watching for you," Jennifer said. "Every day she sat by the window. Every time we went to the forest, she searched." The conversation flowed awkwardly at first, then more naturally. There were things neither Mark nor Sarah was ready to share, the worst parts of their captivity. And there were things Robert and Jennifer held back, the darkest moments of their 9-year wait. But they found middle ground in simple questions, in relearning each other. "Luna was the hero," Robert said. recounting how the dog had led them to Sarah's bracelet. "She knew something we didn't. She was trying to tell us all along," Jennifer added. "We just didn't understand well enough." As evening deepened, Captain Reeves arrived with an update. The FBI had identified the leaders of the trafficking ring, a husband and wife team operating under various aliases. "Victor and Eleanor Mercer," Reeves said, showing them photographs. "They'd been running this operation for at least 15 years. Mark stiffened at the photos. "That's him. He was there in the forest that day." Sarah nodded. "And she's Madam, the one who ran the warehouse." Reeves continued, "They've gone underground, but with what we've recovered from the ledger and your testimonies, it's just a matter of time. Every law enforcement agency in the country is looking for them." After Reeves left, the family settled into an uneasy calm. The knowledge that the Mercers remained free cast a shadow over their reunion. None of them voiced the fear, but it hung in the air. What if they came back to silence the witnesses who could destroy them? That night, neither Mark nor Sarah could sleep in their childhood bedrooms. Too much space, too much quiet, too many shadows. They ended up in the living room, sitting back to back on the floor, a position that felt secure after years of captivity. Luna curled beside them, her breathing labored but content. "Do you remember their faces?" Sarah asked softly. "Mom and Dad, did you remember exactly how they looked?" "Not exactly," Mark admitted. "But I remembered how it felt to be with them. Safe." "We're not the same people they lost," Sarah said. "And they're not the same people we left behind," Mark replied. "But we're still family." Dawn was breaking when Robert found them, still sitting back to back with Luna keeping watch beside them. Without a word, he brought blankets and coffee, then sat on the couch nearby, close enough to provide comfort, far enough to give space. "One day at a time," he said simply. The next week was filled with medical appointments, therapy sessions, and continuing interviews with FBI agents building their case against the Mercers. Mark and Sarah stayed close to home, the outside world still too overwhelming after years of confinement. Luna rarely left their side, despite her advancing age and declining health. The veterinarian had warned Jennifer months earlier that the old dog's heart was failing. "She's held on this long through sheer determination," he had said. Dogs sometimes wait for a specific event before letting go. 10 days after their return home, while the family sat together in the backyard, Luna suddenly stood from her resting place and began barking at the fence line. Her bark was weak but insistent. Mark was on his feet immediately, alert to potential danger. Luna continued barking, moving stiffly toward the back gate. Robert followed, tension visible in his shoulders. Before he reached the gate, it swung open. Captain Reeves stood there, accompanied by 2 FBI agents. "They're in custody," he announced without preamble. Victor and Eleanor Mercer were apprehended trying to cross into Canada an hour ago. The news washed over the family like a physical wave. Jennifer sagged against the porch railing. Sarah covered her mouth with her hand. Mark stood frozen, processing the implications. They were truly safe now. The people who had stolen 9 years of their lives would face justice. Luna stopped barking and returned to Sarah's side, tail wagging slowly. She settled at the young woman's feet with a contented sigh. That evening, the family gathered in the living room to watch news coverage of the arrests. The Mercers' faces, the faces that had haunted Mark and Sarah's nightmares for 9 years, appeared on screen in handcuffs, being led into a federal building. Luna lay between Mark and Sarah on the couch, her head resting on Sarah's lap, her tail occasionally thumping against Mark's leg. As the news segment ended, she let out a long, satisfied sigh. "Luna." Sarah's voice held sudden concern. The old dog's eyes were open but distant, her breathing shallow. Mark placed a gentle hand on her side, feeling the slowing beat of her heart. "She was waiting," Jennifer said softly, kneeling beside the couch. She was waiting for this. For us to be safe, Mark added, his voice breaking. Sarah bent close to the dog's ear. It's okay, Luna. You did it. You found us. You can rest now. With the family gathered around her, Luna took one final breath, her eyes closed, and the loyal heart that had kept faith for 9 long years finally stilled. They buried her beneath the oak tree in the backyard, the one she used to chase squirrels around as a puppy, the one that had shaded the family during countless summer barbecues before the children disappeared. As Robert placed the last shovelful of earth over Luna's grave, Sarah spoke. She never gave up, she said. Even when everyone else thought it was hopeless, she kept searching. That's what love does, Jennifer replied, tears streaming down her face. It doesn't give up. It keeps watch. It brings you home. Mark placed Luna's worn collar with its bone-shaped tag still attached atop the fresh earth. She was the best dog in the world. The family stood together as twilight deepened into night, complete again yet forever changed, survivors of an ordeal that had stolen their past but failed to destroy their future. And above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, like distant lights guiding lost travelers home. 1 year after Mark and Sarah's return, the Thomas family gathered once more in the park where their last complete family portrait had been taken a decade earlier. The same photographer set up his equipment under the same oak tree, now 10 years older, its branches reaching higher into the blue summer sky. "Everyone ready?" the photographer called. Jennifer smoothed her blouse, white, like in the original photo. Robert adjusted his light blue shirt. Mark and Sarah, now 23 and 21, stood where their younger selves had once stood, with a visible space between them. "Wait," Sarah said. She reached into her bag and pulled out Luna's collar, the bone-shaped tag still attached. She held it in her cupped hands between herself and Mark, filling the empty space where Luna had sat in their last family portrait. "Perfect," the photographer said. The flash captured them, older, scarred, but together, survivors. The trial of Victor and Eleanor Mercer had concluded 3 months earlier. Both received multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. Mark and Sarah's testimony had been crucial to the prosecution's case, their courage in facing their captors inspiring other victims to come forward. The foundation Robert and Jennifer had started to find their children had transformed into an advocacy organization for trafficking victims, with Sarah working as its outreach coordinator. Mark was studying criminal justice, determined to help prevent what had happened to them from happening to others. Recovery wasn't linear. There were still nightmares, still moments when crowds became overwhelming or a stranger's glance triggered panic. But there was healing, too, slow and steady, like new growth after a forest fire. After the new family portrait was taken, they walked together to the edge of Blackwood Forest. They hadn't been back here together since the reunification. The trail entrance looked smaller, less ominous than in their memories. "Should we?" Jennifer asked, uncertain. Sarah took her mother's hand. Mark took his father's. Together they stepped onto the path, not going deep, just far enough to reclaim some piece of what had been taken. "It's just trees," Mark said softly. "Just a forest. Not the monsters we made it in our minds," Sarah agreed. At the big oak tree that had once been their meeting spot, they stopped. Robert produced a small plaque from his pocket, bronze, with Luna's name and the simple inscription, "She led them home." As he affixed it to the tree trunk, Jennifer spoke. "This is where paths diverged for our family, but it's also where they came back together. Because we never stopped looking," Robert added. "And we never stopped trying to come home," Mark said. Sarah touched the plaque gently. "Luna would be proud of us." They stood in silence for a moment, 4 people bound by loss and love and the long journey back to each other. Then, together, they turned and walked back toward the light, leaving the shadows of the forest behind. The Thomas family had been broken apart by cruelty and chance. They had lost 9 irreplaceable years. But what they had found again, each other, their strength, their future, would sustain them through whatever came next. Some stories don't have perfect endings, but they have new beginnings. And sometimes, that's enough.
That's the end of the story. Which character's journey touched you the most? Mark, Sarah, or their parents? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this emotional journey, hit subscribe. Stick around and discover another powerful story waiting for you.